Welcome everybody to another Thoughts and Feelings podcast. I'm here with Alex today. He is a person I've never met before, and we're going to be talking about the subject of launching into adulthood, which is something I've thought a lot about in my life. And as I've gotten older and settled into being an actual adult, I think about it a little bit less, but I still think it's a fascinating subject. So once again, this is a dialogue, and a dialogue is where two people listen carefully, ask each other questions, and see what changes about them by the end of the conversation and beyond. So welcome, Alex.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. So, man, there's so many places we could start here.
Yeah.
Um, how's it going launching into adulthood? I mean, you look like a young guy. I don't know if are you in your early 20s or
I'm 19.
you're
Yeah.
19. Okay, so you're actually a teenager. This is fascinating to me. It's hard to
Yeah.
call you a teenager when you're at the very end. Maybe you don't want
No,
to
no
be.
problem. I
Uh-huh.
I just feel like I still identify as a teenager. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, I remember turning 20 and what a big deal that was to me. I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm not a teenager. I'm getting old. Do you have any thoughts like that?
Yeah, I definitely have had some feelings that I'm getting old. I was I work at a high school, and so most of these kids aren't a whole lot younger than me. And last week somebody called me old, and I was like you're only like 3 years younger than me. And so yeah, I was like, huh, I like certainly relative to some of these kids I'm old, but yeah.
Interesting. Um, what what is bad about being quote unquote old in your mind? Because I don't think anybody likes to be called that, but
Yeah, definitely. There's just a lot of like responsibilities and things that I just a lot of like paperwork and boring stuff and like taxes and insurance and just boring stuff like that that you need to figure out how to do. I just got my car smogged and renewed its registration and tried to figure out my whether or not I was like exempt from withholding because I don't make enough money. Boring, like so many boring things like that no one really teaches you how to do, that you don't really learn in school. The thing that I found most annoying about quote unquote adulthood.
hmm. Does it feel like the prospect of these adult boring responsibilities kind of sucks the excitement out of what you have experienced so far? Like, do you feel like you're going in the direction of kind of a boring life? Is that what?
I certainly hope not. I don't think that those things are necessarily indicative of a boring life as a whole. I think that those are boring parts of most adult lives
Mhm.
and sort of like more sensitive to them right now because I haven't been exposed to most of them before. Like I'm sure you're used to getting your car smogged and renewing your registration, but like for me, it was my first time doing that, and so for me, it was like I was like, oh, this is kind of annoying, kind of a pain. Yeah, so I don't expect that to be a like I'm not gonna like do that as a career or anything. So I don't think that I will be like continually oppressed by paperwork. I think I'm just more aware of it now, it being the first time I'm doing those sort of things.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And for the record, I don't even know what it means to have your car smogged. And I've never done it. I maybe my car is like super over smogged right now because I've never done it. This is terrible news for me. Um, the registration thing is very annoying. I have to agree, but I usually have somebody else do it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that there is that option. You can always pay people to do things, but
that's true. Yes,
there's certain things you want to do that are
yeah,
part of taking responsibility as an adult. But anyway, my philosophy is to do what you're best at and pay people who are best at the things you're not best at to do them.
right, yeah,
But that's not everybody's philosophy.
yeah.
How is it going launching into adulthood?
um, it's I think sort of in this like in this day and age, it's so like there isn't a normal way to launch into adulthood anymore because like there's so many different career paths now, even more so than there were like 10 years ago. And there aren't necessarily like established ways to achieve those career paths, as opposed to like if you wanted to be like a lawyer or like a doctor, like there are very like established and like certainly not easy, but like
Hmm.
consistent ways to do that. Whereas if you want to be like a graphic designer, or I have a friend who's studying unmanned aerial systems, so like drones and stuff. Like, do you go to school for that? Do you just start doing that? Because they're such developing fields, haven't developed programs for those things yet. If you like I was saying, like graphic design, like if you have an eye for graphic design and have been like doing it for a long time and have like the skill for it, like do is it even worth going to school if you can already if you're already making money doing that?
Yeah. So basically, you're confused about how to actually achieve what you want, even if it sounds like I'm guessing you have some ideas of what you want, but you're like, how do I effectuate that? Is it a school thing? If it's not, I'm guessing it's not a school thing. Otherwise you would have indicated that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I still plan to go to school. I'm in school right now, and I'm trying like sort of trying to study the things that are closest to what I want to end up doing, and sort of develop some of the skills adjacent to those fields. There isn't a defined path for success in a lot of
Hmm.
modern creative or technological or artistic careers.
I find it interesting that the knowledge you'd be looking for is out there and somebody could tell it to you. There's
Right.
probably hundreds of people or thousands of people that could tell it to you, but you either have to find where people like that have published it online in some way, talk to someone who doesn't really understand but will generally push you in the right direction, and you just kind of like bump around until you figure it out yourself, or have like a mentor that has done this before who can help you through it. But I feel like it has a lot to do with relationships, unless you're going to DIY the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. And yeah, I have found sort of a couple of mentors in fields similar to what I'm looking to do, and most of them weren't studying those things when they were in school. And then yeah, like you're saying, like there are many ways to learn things nowadays, whether that be online, sort of like through like an online course, or even just like watching YouTube, or watching people who are doing the thing that you want to be doing, depending on the field, obviously. But there's a surprisingly large amount of knowledge to be gained just from sitting at home watching stuff.
True. So my mind is going in a bit of a different direction as you're talking, because you are still in that stage of figuring out what you want to do, and I do remember that so well. What I remember about my experience was how scared I was of failure. Is that a big part of your psyche?
For me, yeah, I would say so. In yeah, partially, mostly because there's so many things that I'm interested in, and so many of them are like so different, and the way I would go about doing those things or studying those things or making a career in those things would also be different. So, and I have no doubt that I could be successful in one or some of those things, but my fear sort of isn't it is more of a fear of choosing the wrong thing and not enjoying it or not being good at it. So I suppose in a way, yes, a fear of failure, but more so of indecision.
Yeah, I suppose fear of failure is relative to something you want. So you'd be afraid that you're not going to achieve the outcome that you want.
Mhm.
I don't know if I can jump to this, but I'm feeling like it logically follows that feeling certain about what you do is very important to you. You want to feel like you chose something that is sustaining and makes you content.
Yeah, that's definitely a part of it. Finding something that I'm good at and that I enjoy. Like you want to not hate your job. um
Yeah.
and but also like a lot of people say that you shouldn't make your hobbies your work. And I'm not sure where I fall on that spectrum, whether or not I would want to do something for work that I am interested in or do on my own time
Hmm.
additionally.
Kind of sounds like you're saying that work is meant to have meaning. That seems to be important because work can play many
Yeah,
functions. You know, there.
right. Yeah, I think that yeah, I'm definitely looking for work that has meaning, and work that another thing with sort of like creative or developing fields is that they're not as financially viable traditionally. Like even if you're like good at graphic design, then I keep going back to graphic design, but like any sort of recently developed creative field, even if you're good at that, you might not be able to find work in that. It might be like inconsistent work. And because they're newer fields, they're generally, again, depending on what the actual career is, there generally isn't as much of a market for it yet, or it's still a developing market. And so like a lot of the people that I know that are graphic designers are like, wow, cool. I went to art school. I love graphic design, but what am I going to do with this degree? What is my actual job going to be? Is that going to be a stable job or a job that pays well enough to sustain a family or live in the area that I want to live in?
Hmm.
Or that kind of thing is, I think, a major concern of people my age that want to have those sort of like creative and fulfilling jobs that are like financially uncertain or have accrued like student debt from going to art school or theater school or music school or whatever it might be, and whether or not that is going to be a desirable thing in the coming economy, whether those industries are going to be more successful or less successful than they are now.
I'm interested in the fact that you seem to be seeking stability and perhaps a bit fearful of not finding the right path, not finding the right career, having it be inconsistent. And I was not concerned about those things per se. So I'll tell you like what I was concerned about, and then I'm
Yeah,
curious
yeah.
what your reaction is. I mean, I I think deep down I wanted to get rich so that so that people would I would have more control over the world, that I would be able to like attract my future wife better and live a cool lifestyle, listen to a lot of rap and Jay-Z and stuff like that. And it certainly it's not what I think about now, and it's very far from what I think about now, but that's kind of where my head was at. It was immature, but it's where I was. Now there's a layer deeper than that, of course, because that's a fairly
Mm,
superficial type of goal, which is that I was extremely insecure, and I felt like if I didn't like overdo it and get like huge societal success, that I would be left in the dust and would be a failure, whatever that meant. But that's kind of what I was after. It sounds like your
mm.
goals are, I don't want to say more modest than that, but more realistic than that. That is interesting to me.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say I my goals are sort of more ones of fulfillment and stability as opposed to those of more traditional success. Like I'd love to be successful, and but again, with it being sort of there being a variety of developing fields, it's not entirely certain what success looks like in those fields. And success in those fields, because they're so subjective, can be different for different people. Like so, like you might like I again, like say suppose graphic design, if you want to be like a great graphic designer, like you're not going to be very well known except to other graphic designers, and and you might be okay with that. Like that might be success for you, is being well renowned in the world of graphic design, as opposed to other more traditional things like studying business or medicine or something where it's a little more quantifiable, your success. But I find that in the creative realm, it's more about it's more about like making art that fulfills you and meeting other people with similar vision, because I think a lot of people in those fields have already accepted that they're probably not going to be financially successful. Like, and that's probably why I've sort of like settled for stability as opposed to success. Do you feel
I
like
like
you've found that success for that you were initially looking for? I know you're saying that what you're looking for now
Mhm.
sort of is very different than
Mhm.
what that was, but do you feel like you now or in between then and now have like achieved that sort of success that you were seeking at the time?
I mean, in a way, I became more successful than I expected to be, and it was less fulfilling. So it's
Hmm.
hard for me to totally answer, but
Yeah.
I found the most cliched thing that the more I had, the more I needed, because I was really feeling I was trying desperately to like fill up a hole that can't be filled in myself. And then I realized that I had to change goals because it's like one of those things where if you measure yourself traditionally, like I want to be prestigious or rich or have the most superlative whatever, there's always going to be people that have more than you. And then it's just one of those insidious things where you continue trying to acquire and be more and more. And then you have to ask yourself, what's missing that I'm spending so much time on that? So I actually like your goals because they seem more related to the things that end up mattering. I really, I'm a CEO of a company. I spend a lot of time with other CEOs, and I think they're all like enjoy the convenience of whatever money they've earned, and it
Mm.
varies, of course, by CEO and by company, but they enjoy that. But there's not like a higher level of happiness amongst when I spend time with people that have more money. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it's like I didn't quite achieve it, even though I superficially achieved what I wanted.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting that you, yeah, sort of like you were saying, found the success, but not the fulfillment you had hoped for. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say a lot of the fulfillment has come from uh, basically two things: looking inward. For me, it was through therapy. There's different ways of doing it, but trying to understand, like, my own expectations and what drives me, because we're all like living in a world within our minds, even more than we're living in the exterior physical world. I find, I don't know what the
Mm.
percentage breakdown is, but if you ignore the inner world and you spend so much time in the outer world, then you're just really in the dark. I mean, many people are living, they don't know it, but they're living in really constricted lives, and they're always bumping into walls, their own barriers. It might be due to fear, due to self-limitation, insecurity. And if you spend time expanding those walls to get more freedom internally, then that can change your life, I think, far more than an external thing, unless you're physically in danger. So
Hmm.
that's been one, and the other has been relationships. Those are the things that have helped me. I found that at the end of the day, it's like the people in your life that make a difference. If I'm alone in the world, no matter what I have, I don't care about it. Like, meaning is made in the context of people. That's something that I've concluded.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I liked that. Yeah, meaning is made in the context of people. I think that's definitely true.
How does that
Yeah.
strike you? Is it similar, different to the way you think
Um,
now?
Especially recently, having been isolated from people, it has sort of forced me to be a little more internal. And I was relatively internal before. Yeah, I think you need to internally decide what you will find meaningful and what will be fulfilling to you before trying to externally pursue that, if that makes sense. And unless you and sort of like you were saying earlier, like if you define success as like financial success or like reputational success, then there's no ceiling on that sort of success. And so if you are externally motivated by those things and just keep pursuing those things, then you'll never have enough. But if your motivations are sort of more internal or intrinsic and are motivated by, like you're saying, like relationships or meaning in the context of people and finding other people that you relate to, then I think that that sort of fulfillment is almost in a way more tangible when you're in a place where you feel content with your relationships. I think that's almost more easily identifiable than sort of like commercial or financial success because there's no limit to that.
Having been around a lot of and still spend time around a lot of extremely financially successful people, it is alienating to do that. And I think many of them, if they could, would pay for integration. Sometimes they'll
Mm.
have very big families, because then you have built-in integration. But I think it's one of those things that's so valuable. If you could pay for it, you would, but you can't pay for it. It's almost something you specifically cannot pay for it, and it's almost like the more you try to transactionally achieve, integration socially with friends, with family, the less it works. So it really has to do with being authentic and having people accept you for who you really are as much as they can. And, delivering value by being a good friend, being there, paying attention, listening, whatever it may be. Yeah, that's something that it took me a long time to learn because it was convenient for me to think that I could like buy everything that I wanted. That if I was successful enough, then people would want to follow me or something like that. And that's true, but those people obviously don't really like you for you when you do that. So to completely divorce the idea of my achievement being able to get me what I wanted in this deep social way, just feeling integrated, just feeling like I'm part of a tribe, a group, that was very important for me, and it's one of the things I think that distinguishes me from a lot of other people in the business world who are just so deep into it that it's hard to focus on that. And there's a lot of people that are thinking the same way I am too, but I don't think the majority are because they are people that, like me, were motivated by an insecurity or fear. Maybe a parent wasn't there for them, and then they just kept going and they never looked back. Because nice things do come from money, but the really important things don't. So
Do you feel like you're in a place now, like in your relationships um that you're happy with?
I do, although there's still more that I want.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I find that it's like what would sound mundane uh, is what I want more. Like I live in California. My parents live in New York, and I've got two brothers. My brothers live in New York too. So if I could just like we used to have Sunday family dinners back when I was a teenager. If I could just come back every Sunday for Sunday family dinners, um, that would probably complete it for me. And I want more relationships where there can be deep conversation and stuff. And I do have a number of really good friendships where I can do that, but I really love that, and there's not quite enough. And I want to integrate more in the community. And you were talking about it, what an isolating time it is right now. We're filming this during the kind of middle of the coronavirus stuff, and I miss society, community, people that you walk by and wave hello. Those are the ways in which I'm not as fulfilled as I could be, but I overall am. I'm married. I have a son, a 2-year-old boy, and those things fulfill me enormously. My relationship with my wife and my son, and I have many good friends. Some of them don't live here, and that would be great to be able to see them in person. But yeah, there's always something I'm working towards for sure. Can I ask you the same? How you're feeling in terms of fulfillment?
Like right now, or sort of like what my goals for fulfillment are?
Well, I think I was talking more like as far as like social integration.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
I know, right? I know this is a very particular time, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just curious to hear what it's like to be you.
Yeah, I've been feeling even apart from the pandemic, I felt sort of not very socially integrated, and then that was sort of furthered or exacerbated by sort of having to be alone, not alone, but like be in my house like most of the time and not see people. Sort of going back to the college thing, I think that college has been a significant part of that because at least for me, the end of high school just felt very sudden, and like I didn't love high school or anything. I don't think most people do. Well, some people. But for me, it just felt very sudden, very abrupt, and sort of like launching to adulthood. Just a lot of very sudden, very drastic changes in sort of, and like what we've already talked about, like deciding what you want to do with your life or financially, but also socially. Like most of the people that I went to high school with that I used to talk to on a regular basis, I haven't talked to since high school. And a lot of and most of those people went to like schools all over the country. And so that has been sort of socially isolating, and now not going to school in person. I haven't gone to school in person since high school. That has been sort of socially isolating, not meeting new people, and then also not working. not meeting new people there. I feel like sort of my old community I was sort of cut off from, and I haven't had the opportunity to develop a new one.
Wow. I really, the only words that come to me is that sucks. That 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 these kind of restrictions came along at this time. That you're young and it's very important. It's like arguably more important to socialize now in this time of like freedom and school and stuff like that, or what should be that, than it
Mhm.
is to learn academically.
Yeah.
So to have a piece of that taken away, you will get it back. I'm, extremely confident. I have no doubt. Ugh, it's just when I put myself in the shoes of anybody in college right now, it's just I feel so upset. Um,
Yeah.
are you? Do you feel like there's just nothing you can do, or you feel angry about it, or
Um, I don't think there's nothing I could do about it, but I'm not sure what exactly to do about it. And I've been busy enough with school and stuff that I haven't sort of made an effort to be like intentionally active about it, because like if when you're working or going to school or whatever, you not like you're forced to see people, but you're forced to see people and
Mhm.
interact with them. And if you're doing all of that from home, then you're not only are you not meeting new people, you're not seeing the people you're used to, and maybe you don't have sort of like I was saying with my high school friends, like you don't have a way of communicating with, like you have a way of communicating with them obviously, but it's not the way that you're used to, and it might be awkward to like randomly call somebody, or like obviously depending on your relationship with them. And what was the question?
Mhm. Well, I guess if you're angry, I think I had asked,
Okay,
are you
yeah.
angry about the situation you're in?
I'm generally not an angry person, so I would say no, largely because there isn't like a like you could be like angry at like society or like angry at like coronavirus, but I don't know, I don't find those sorts of anger to be productive. And those are like singular things, but they're not tangible things. And your anger at them, and even perhaps your efforts to change them, aren't going to be very productive, most likely. So I'd say I'm not angry, I'm disappointed. If that
It's
makes
interesting.
sense.
I've heard people say things like that. I'm sorry to interrupt. That it's not productive to be angry, but you can't help being
Yeah.
angry when you, right? I mean, like even if it's not productive, or
Yeah.
can you help it? Then you gotta show
Um
me how to do that.
that's a good point. I think it's perhaps just because I don't tend to be an angry person,
Hmm.
that maybe I would be angry at society, or angry at like the institution of college, or angry at coronavirus, if I were the sort of person to be angered in general. But I don't know, I just feel like I'm just not, and that's not even a very intentional thing to not be angry about things. And maybe it's just more of an internal anger. I don't even know that I would call it anger, but yeah, yeah. I wouldn't say I'm angry about my situation right now. I think it's unfortunate, and I wish it were different. But yeah, I find I don't generally get angry about things that I can't change, which yeah, sort of like you were saying, seems kind of contrary to perhaps the more traditional concept of anger, or how anger manifests in most people. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that before in reference to my anger or lack thereof. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, because on the one hand, I'm like, well, that's very healthy. That's wonderful. On the other hand, I'm like, man, I get angry at things I can't control all the time. That's where I get
Yeah,
most angry. It's like,
yeah.
why can't I do this thing? I just want to do it, or I can't achieve this, or whatever it is. And Yeah, I mean it's a slippery slope. You don't want to be angry for like too long, but if you don't allow yourself to be angry, then that still goes somewhere inside, and you don't want that to happen because then it morphs and changes and all that stuff. That's
Yeah.
been my experience. Do you get angry, period, a lot, or I mean, at all? Have you been angry in the
Um,
last 60 days?
um, I don't think anyone who has been watching me for the last 60 days would have told you that I was angry, if that makes sense. But I think that I am angry not infrequently. But again, that's usually directed at things that I feel like I can change.
So it motivates you.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would even call it motivation, but I don't have a whole lot of data points on me getting angry at things, honestly, so it's kind of hard to say. Yeah, like I said, I guess I'm not a very angry individual. And when I do feel like I am angry at things, I often won't express it. And and usually that's in like interpersonal relationships. If I'm upset about something, and often I just don't know how to express that or whether or not the other person will be receptive to that or whether or not that's a productive way to try to resolve interpersonal conflict.
Hmm. Wow, this is a very complex subject.
What are the sorts of things that you feel like you get angry about, and how do you deal with that?
Well, I think there's what I would consider healthy anger, and then less healthy anger, and I'm happy when both occur. Actually, even the less healthy anger, where it's like nothing I can do about it. So,
Mhm.
for instance, I if I were the local government, I would have different restrictions around coronavirus, just a little bit more targeted rather than just blanket. Everybody has to do the same thing across the whole state of California, and that makes me angry sometimes because there's times when I'm like I'm 100% safe, and I would still like to do things that
Right.
I'm not allowed to do, and there's no reason other than just pure bureaucracy that
Yeah.
there's a rule against it. Like there's no
Right. Yeah.
logic. That makes me very angry. I would call that a less healthy anger
I think that's
because
still a justified anger though, even if it's not a healthy anger, perhaps in how you deal with it. But I think the motivation for that anger is or can be justified or
yeah,
argued for. So
yeah. You know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe that is the healthy anger because that is why wouldn't a person be angry about that? That is
yeah.
angering.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel
I
good
think you
about my
can
anger.
I think you can deal with your anger in an unhealthy way, but I
Right.
think that as long as the thing that you're angry about has like viable explanation,
Hmm.
then I don't think that the anger itself is intrinsically healthy or unhealthy. It's in how you process it. Like if you were like stomping around your house every day, being like, I want to go walk my dog, I want to go outside, then obviously that's not a healthy way to process it. But if
Right.
you are, it sounds like you have sort of like it's unfortunate, but you sort of accepted that, you've dealt with it, you've figured out ways to still live your life in spite of that. And even though you wish it were different, you're not about to like go like punch your mayor or something.
Right. 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 Yeah, that's true. That's true. And actually, you've helped me to realize that that is an example of healthy anger. I think unhealthy anger, I think I can think of a good example. So I am a very hard worker. And this past week, I just had a ton of things in work. It was just back to back for really the last 3 weeks. And this was like 2 days ago. I finished work and I was just kind of complaining to my wife. I was like, oh my God, I'm so tired. I had such a back to back crazy day. And
Hmm.
she had a busy day too and basically didn't show a lot of sympathy. And I was kind of hinting that I wanted sympathy. I was just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, my day was so hard. And
Yeah.
she just couldn't give it right then. I think she knew that I wanted it, but it was just like,
Yeah.
got a screaming 2 year old that she had been watching for a few hours at that point.
Yeah.
And it like the feeling I had, it was anger, but it was like, man, I work so hard. Why can't you have sympathy for me? I do all this hard work for us. She's part of that.
Right.
That is me, I think, being angry at something that she doesn't deserve that anger. I need to take care of that
Right.
myself because that's about what I think I deserve, and that's like into my childhood stuff. And I think that's an unhealthy anger, and the more I can not put that on other people, the better, which I think I'm pretty good at.
Mhm.
But I think my wife would say, no, sometimes he's not as good as he could be. But
Yeah.
okay, so I think we have example of justified anger, and then like see what you can do about that anger. Please don't put
Yeah.
that on other people when possible.
Yeah. I think that's still an understandable anger though. Like I wouldn't, I mean, I'm not your wife, but I wouldn't be angry at you for having that anger. At least, I mean, again, not your wife, so I'm not sure
Hmm.
to what extent that anger manifests or
Right.
and but yeah, like you sound like you understand that she had a bad day or a long day
Yeah.
and she probably understands the same about you.
Yeah.
Um so either of your reactions to those days I feel like are still understood by the other. And yeah, and again, I think it's how you deal with that
Right.
anger. And
Right. I think it's like self control.
yeah,
If I can realize what I just said quickly enough and curtail whatever I might be putting on her, like if I were to just start stomping my feet type thing and just be like, hey, I had a hard day. Why can't you pay attention to me or something like that? And it went beyond that and I got really pissed about it. I think that's when
yeah,
the third party observer's sympathy swiftly goes down,
yeah,
including
yeah,
myself observing myself as a third party now.
yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I definitely. And it sounds like you also have sympathy for both parties in that situation. And
Yeah, but that's hard. It's hard to do. I mean, like, my wife and I often say that the goal is not to like not fight during times, when you're new parents and, um, coronavirus is super hard on everybody. It's been hard on us. And um, that we just want to have the shortest fights we can have. And when I say fight, it's not like we never scream at each other or anything like that. And I feel good about that. It's because we've gone to couples therapy. We're very communicative people, and I think that's something I'm proud of in our relationship, that we have short arguments. Like we get to the bottom of it. We know we have feelings. Some of it's our stuff. Some of it's real issues to talk about that we need to work out between us. And then we're generally able to move on. Sometimes it can last like there's an undercurrent of things for a few days, even if we thought we like
right, yeah,
kissed and made up type thing. And that happens. I think. Yeah, I want to keep getting better at it, but I just wanted to share that as like that is our goal. We think it's more realistic. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's a good goal. And yeah, you seem like the kind of person that, or I think we both seem like the kind of people that aren't gonna be like screaming at people when they're having an argument. And I think a that's sort of a indicative of a mature, even if you or discussion or argument or whatever you want to call it, that you can still understand the other person and listen to the other person and make the other person feel like they're being listened to.
yeah, that's the goal. That's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Hmm. Can I ask your back to sort of the theme of launching
Yeah.
into adulthood? Can I ask your view on relationships and your feeling about relationships in your own life, like romantic relationships?
Yeah. So yeah, you talking about sort of your wife and your kid and even your parents and your brothers sort of made me or reminded me of sort of how I feel about family. Oh, well, yeah, I'll start by talking about family, but yeah, you said sort of romance and I think by extension family. And so yeah, and I think a part of launching into adulthood, certainly not the part that I'm at yet, but in perhaps in the near future is finding someone you're interested in or perhaps getting married and having a family. And I think again, sort of what you were saying earlier, a lot of how your family and relationships are going to pan out is related to the experiences or what you've seen in your parents' relationships, or maybe the relationships of your siblings, and whether good or bad relationships that you have seen, it seems like those, like one way or the other, they are going to impact your relationships and the way that you go about your relationships and your goals for relationships. And I think that's certainly the case with me. Yeah.
I had asked about your, I guess I was curious about your like personal feelings and situation with relationships, but the answer you gave was a little bit more general and philosophical. I was just curious
Okay.
about that.
um yeah. I don't know. I think of myself as somewhat I mean, not that I'm like, oh, I'm such a great philosopher, but I think that I like to think of, like, I like to think, and I like to think about thinking. And I'll try to give a more specific answer though. So yeah, I've been in relationships. I had a girlfriend in high school, and wouldn't be opposed to having another one.
Mhm.
Again, hard to find these days. Again, this is sort of tangential, but that was another reason that launching into adulthood was sort of difficult for me, and another reason contributing to sort of the loss of the community that I had in high school was breaking up with that girlfriend, and then sort of feeling alienated from her friends who were also my friends, and then that sudden that like abrupt end to high school, and that like sudden decrease in communication with those friends made it sort of like I don't know what my friends or her friends are thinking about me or how they felt about me. And because I wasn't gonna see them for a long time or maybe ever, I didn't necessarily try to repair those relationships.
Hmm, interesting. Um, I have found that most people I know don't have many high school relationships anymore. I'm in my late 30s. I still do have a really dear friend who was my best friend in high school. And that is my one high school relationship. Now, not that I'm necessarily typical, but when I think of all my friends, one of them who's female has a bunch of friends that were like from childhood. They live in different places, so they're not the primary people she
Mhm.
hangs out with. But I have found that most people make friends through basically their regular everyday interactions, the places where they have regular everyday interactions. So roommates, if you're in college, college, and work.
Mhm.
Almost everybody's friends came from those things. And sometimes you might be part of like a club, like, I know a lot of gamers, like I don't know how they meet other gamers because I'm not quite a gamer, even though I enjoy
Yeah.
video games. But if they regularly do that, like wherever you see people day in and day out, like somehow
Right.
you get to know those people, I find. So yeah, definitely when in-person things restart will be nice. But
Yeah.
anyway, I think I got away a little bit from what you were saying. I was picking up on the fact that you were friends with the same people as your girlfriend, and the break both in high school and from her, I think sort of sundered some of those connections.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, sort of what you were saying about yeah, you make relationships where you're going, where you're seeing people, and during high school, that is, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, is largely those other people that go to your high school,
Right,
because the like that is your work and your like extracurricular activities are mostly consist of that same group of people,
right.
and then when that disappears, those like unless you're like also going to college with some of those people, then there's really not a whole lot of reason you would ever see those people again, unless
Hmm.
they like live near you
Hmm.
or whatever the case may be. But then when and also to some extent that is the case with the college, but and then perhaps to a lesser extent with things like work, because you're probably going to stay there well, may or may not stay there longer than you were in high school, and see those people more regularly perhaps, and interact with them to a greater extent than you would otherwise be, or than you were during high school. So
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Can I ask, just back to the relationship thing? Are you not interested in like doing online dating? Because I have to imagine that I don't know what your comfort level is, but you could potentially like meet up with someone and go for a walk or something, and like, but everybody's different views or comfort.
Yeah, no, I've thought about that. And I have a lot of friends who have done that and had moderate success with it.
Yeah.
Um, but so yeah, I have considered that. I think the main thing stopping me at this point, I was actually just talking to a friend about this, is I don't know what I put on my profile. And I feel like that's not like a big decision to make, but like maybe, and like I don't know, depends on how seriously you're considering online dating and how serious you want to
Hmm.
be in your dating. But I would want my profile to accurately represent me, and I don't know what I would put there. And I also don't have a lot of recent pictures of myself.
Huh.
So yeah, I think emotionally I'd be okay with it. But yeah, but maybe I'm just too lazy to get it started. And then
Ah,
the other thing is that I'm still like living with my parents, and I don't know how they feel about that. That might be a little weird. I don't know, maybe not that weird, but yeah. So yeah, I've
so
considered it, but yeah, I haven't quite gotten there
your reasons I find I'm sorry, but they're kind of amusing to me because
yet.
living with your parents when you're 19 is not unusual at all. Like, I think it's funny
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you are like, well, I don't know how, an 18 or 19 or whatever 20-year-old woman would feel about that. Hopefully they would just be like, yeah, so am I, or whatever,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
like,
No, it wasn't so much about embarrassment with living with my parents. It's
mm,
about like being subject to my parents and
uh,
having less freedom, whether that be like literal like go and like drive and meet someone, or like have someone over, or sort of like emotional freedom and being able to, yeah, like I just don't know how I would explain that to my parents, or how I would
mm.
talk to my parents about that. And I feel like it's not enough of a priority for me to try to like push that.
I think the other thing you said though was kind of profound, that something about putting yourself in a nutshell, describing yourself is such a roadblock that it would be the reason that you
Mhm.
don't do online dating, because like what almost nobody knows what they're going to be doing when they're 19 in like 5 years, or
Right.
certainly 10 years.
Yeah.
Maybe one person I know out of whatever few hundred people that I feel like I know fairly well, I would say, really knew what they were going to do when they were 19. They may have had the idea, but like, I think pretty much everybody that's 19 that's on an online dating platform and says like who they are and what they're doing, like that's not going to be true in 5 years.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's my impression. But I think that's very interesting. That
Yeah.
something about defining yourself is holding you back.
Yeah. Well, I think that I think I could accurately get to know someone and have someone get to know me without meeting them. But like ideally or I mean, again, depending on how you want to go about dating, I think I would want my profile to as accurately represent me as possible.
Mm,
But I don't think you can get all that across in a profile. And another, that's sort of what I was saying earlier about laziness. Another, like I don't feel like talking to people for like I like talking to people, but sort of like throwing like online dating is sort of a shot in the dark. And I feel like I am, maybe not that I'm actually too busy, but I'm like too lazy to
mhm.
pursue all of those ends. Like I don't know. I just feel like I would have a lot of meaningless conversations with a lot of people before I got to anything meaningful.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of limitations to online dating, and that like the attraction part is a prerequisite. Like that has to be there, but it is,
Right.
once it's there, it's certainly not the most important thing, not even close. It's like, I would, if I had to just take a shot at what really makes people compatible, I would say it's like they're really deep ideas about the way their life should work, and then they often want people that are a complement to those ideas. So if
Mhm.
somebody's like, I want my life to be a fairy tale, but I just can't. I, I can't do all that myself, and they have another person that is like, yeah, I also want that, but and I can do that very well. Then they would sort of take care of each other. And if there's somebody that's just very cynical, then they may need someone that's more idealistic. But I feel like there's like a lock and key complementariness or compatibility that is on the level of people's deep ideas about how life should work, and what life fundamentally is. Is it scary? Is it treacherous? Should it be wonderful? I think that has a lot more to do with compatibility than, like, your hobbies and interests and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, just an unsolicited comment I thought I'd throw out there.
No, yeah, I agree, and I think that it's like I was saying, it would take a lot of conversations before you got to those
Mm.
big ideas, and often people aren't comfortable sharing those big ideas,
Hmm.
and that's also not the sort of thing you'd be putting on your profile that like
Yeah, I know.
you're yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a shame, but that's just me. Like
Yeah, no,
that.
I
Yeah.
agree. But even if that were the case, I still wouldn't know what I put on my profile because I feel like that would be even more identifying or incriminating if I put like my core philosophies as a
Uh-huh.
human being.
Huh.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's funny, but that's an interesting idea. Okay, that's a good business idea. A dating network that where you actually write like deep, serious stuff, and like that's the culture of it. Just about like how you really feel about life.
Yeah, I'd
Probably
sign up
nobody
for
would.
that.
Yeah. Okay, at least you would be a part of it. I feel like a lot of people would be like, I don't want to do that. But
Yeah.
we're getting to just our last few minutes, so I just wanted to
Okay. Yeah.
kind of give you an impression that I've been having throughout our dialogue, which is, you seem like a very good guy to me, and it gives me a lot of hope for my son that you're a 19-year-old and you represent what it means to be 19, because you're honest and you seem like you know yourself reasonably well. Yeah, I'm just happy that we had a moment of crossing paths, because I don't ever talk to 19-year-olds, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think a lot about what it means to be a young man, because my little boy is going to be a young man, and I wouldn't want him to go into the world of young men that I was raised into, because I didn't know anybody like you when I was in high school. I mean, I knew some really good people, but they weren't able to be this kind of honest and real. I think that
Hmm.
was my impression. It wasn't about that where I grew up.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I feel like even if you did grow up with people like me, you might not know that you grew up with people like me. And I feel like I am probably the same way that
Mm,
like most of like sort of again with like people aren't comfortable sharing their big ideas or
mm,
their core philosophies. And so even if you have people who have sort of like deep thoughts, you're not going to be talking to your fellow high schoolers about that.
mm.
At least I wasn't with most of my friends, and the ones that I did, I find that those people continue to be my friends. So yeah, I know it's hard to say, but there might be more of those sorts of people than you might think.
Huh.
But I think a lot of them don't have the opportunity to express themselves or communicate with other people as such.
You know what? I love your point. I disagree with myself from 2 minutes ago, because you're right. I might not have gotten to know them, and because I was not being very open myself back then, I wouldn't have attracted them.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
fair point.